appreciate everyone for joining. Obviously, we're not live this month. We're back to online, which isn't ideal, but at the same time, we're going to make this work. Tonight, we have to be off by 6:55 approximately because there's an APC meeting, and I think we only seem to have one line. Hopefully, we can rectify this so we can the city can have multiple meetings at the same time. But tonight, obviously, I'd like to call the meeting to order and get an approval of the July 2020 minutes. Anybody second that?
Second.
Okay.
Joe.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to have Cheryl Soller speak right off the bat here, and then we're going to actually, instead of going right into the second quarter actual versus budget presentation, we're going to talk, because since we're talking about bond issuances, tax dollars, et cetera, we're going to move right to, maybe it's Todd or John, I'm not sure which one, and talk about the public safety building as well as the GO bond, and then move back into our actual versus budget and see how far we can get. But again, we will adjourn tonight at about 6:55, 6:57, something like that. That way Chris can get over to the other one or start the other call. So with that being said, Cheryl, I'd like for you to, I don't know how we're doing this on this, or if you have a presentation or you're just speaking, either way.
I'm just going to speak, and then I'm going to say a few words, and then Mike Reuter, our financial advisor, is going to talk a little bit too, and then we'll be done.
Okay, great.
So anyway, I just thought, I'm Cheryl Sollers. I'm the director of the library, and Mike Reuter, the financial advisor for the library, is also with us tonight. Thank you for giving us some time to talk with you about the library. I would like to discuss with you a two-step process in which the library can accomplish some capital improvements and our ultimate goal of building a new state-of-the-art library that will hopefully become a community center for Westfield, while having an overall tax decrease by 2022. The first step of our process is issuing a $500,000 bond to cover capital projects that will enhance current library services, including RFID technology and an outreach vehicle / bookmobile. These projects will be able to move with us to a possible new facility. This bond issue will have no tax impact, and it's designed to keep our tax rate steady and will not increase the library's 2021 budget over the maximum levy growth quotient of 4.2%. Step 2 of this process is a $16.7 million bond for a new library that will increase the library tax rate at most 2.09 cents. After consulting with bond counsel, financial advisors, and other Westfield, Washington Township entities, the library board has decided to delay the larger bond until 2021, budget cycle 2022. Because the Westfield, Washington school tax rate is projected to decrease by 16.05 cents. And it will also allow us some more time to solidify our plans for this new facility and continue with our community engagement in the process. We have discussed our strategy with other taxing units in Westfield, and they are aware and supportive of this process. Now Mike is going to further explain the financial process of what we would like to accomplish.
Thanks, Cheryl, and good evening. So it might seem strange, the library coming to the city for approval, but the law requires libraries for bond issues to seek the appropriate body for their approval. So in this case, in Westfield, Washington Library's case, the city of Westfield officials would be responsible for approving the bond. Cheryl also touched on that we would be coming back to you next year for the larger bond. But in addition to that, with the larger bond, it would trigger a larger payment. And with a larger payment, if their library budget goes over what's called the 6-year non-farm personal income factor, which is the driver of maximum levies, but in the library's case, it's a limit on the amount of budget they can have. They will also be seeking from you next year budget approval, what's called a binding review. So this is the first step, and we won't need a binding review from the city this year because the payments are essentially remaining the same with this $500,000 bond issue. But in 2021, we'd be seeking the approval of the bond and then coming back to you for a final budget approval, which would include that payment. Now, much like the city, the library has been experiencing significant growth, and their tax rate's actually been declining because their payment has actually been flat. So back in 2018, their tax rate was 0.0121, and today it's 0.0095. And so what we're asking the approval of the city for is to maintain that 0.0095 going into 2021 budget cycle. That would prevent if we don't have a bond issue, the tax rate will actually decline and then go up, rebound again then the second year. So what we're trying to do is manage to the tax rate. Cheryl's already touched on this. This also works nicely because the school is anticipating a large decrease in their tax rate in 2022. And so the larger bond issue would be able to be brought on with still decreasing the tax rate overall for the city of Westfield. So I'd be happy to answer questions. I know you're on a tight schedule, but let me know if you have questions.
Thanks, Mike. This is Troy. I do have just one question, and,
Sure.
and obviously, I mean, the library is obviously important, to the city. When Cheryl was talking about the tax rate for the schools declining by 16.05 cents, is that the referendum or is that outside of the referendum?
You know what? I am not 100% if that's. I think it. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Excuse me, it's the total. It includes the referendum as well.
Okay.
Because currently their tax rate is $1 59.98 cents, and in 2022 it'll be $1.41 or 41.82 cents. So that's a drop of, well, I was doing that from 2021 to 2022. But anyway, it includes the referendum. To answer your question. Sorry.
Okay, so theirs is going from $1.59 to $1.41, correct?
Correct, in 2022.
Right. And Troy, something else. This is inside the circuit breaker. This is not outside the circuit breaker.
Okay.
So this doesn't go above the caps.
Okay. Scott, Joe?
No, I'm good with it. It sounds like a good plan to me. We do need to keep the library, efficient and up to date, and it's kind of a pillar of the community. So we need to do what we need to do to make that happen.
Right. I like that. I like the idea that it's been more of a community center. I think that's what you said, Cheryl, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, obviously libraries have to be, surely they're changing. I got to be honest with you. I don't go to the library, but I mean, I presume they are,
Yes.
Yeah.
We're changing and evolving. Yes.
Right. Okay. Anyone else?
I guess I've got to ask a question, and maybe I missed this, and I apologize if I did. Will the 2021 ask, is that going to be equal to the drop that we're going to see, or how does that compare?
Troy, or Scott, let me try to answer that. So right now, the tax rate for the library is 0.0, for the debt fund is 0.0095. Right. And in modeling it out on a very conservative level, with the bigger bond issue, the rate would go to 3 cents, 0.03. And so it's about a 2-cent increase. But if you were actually to issue those bonds today, it wouldn't even be that. It would be 0.0265. So the difference between next year, the 0.0265 and the 0.0095, that doesn't happen until 2022, in the same year the school is decreasing their tax rate 16 cents. Next year, 2021, the tax rate will be 0.0095. And they will have to come back to you next year to get approval of the bigger bond. So we're not seeking approval of the larger issue this year.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Well, Cheryl, Mike, thanks a lot. We really appreciate that. And that was great because you kept it very, very quick.
So what, I mean, just to let you know, so we'll be coming actually to the September council meeting for the actual approval.
Okay. Can I ask you one other question? And
Sure.
this is somewhat my ignorance on the $500,000 bond. What are our bond issuance costs on a $500,000 bond? I mean, why can't we just use that out of some kind of other operating fund? I mean, so that way we don't have any bond issuance costs on the 500,000. So, I mean, we get maximum bang for our buck. Yeah.
Right. So there's no fees for me in doing a bond issue. I don't live in the bond world. I actually do the budget side of libraries, but there are costs of issuance for the financial advisor and the attorneys.
Yeah.
And
Mike, what's the takedown on a bond like that? I mean, is it 4%? I mean, what? I don't even know anymore.
yeah, so those, depending on how much time is involved with them, but on a small issue, percentage wise, it's going to be a much larger. It's not based on percentage, it's based on the issue. And
Yep.
so I don't have the fees of those professionals. Cheryl, I don't know, have they given you official estimates on that?
No, they haven't as of now that I can see. No, I do not have those yet.
Okay, I would just be curious on that. I mean, because if the takedown is like 4% and it's 20,000, I mean, I don't know why we can't figure out some other way to do, the 500,000 or something.
Yes. So right. So the actual, if we tried to cash flow it ourselves, which is possible, the problem would be the tax rate would then decline and then rebound higher the next year. So the library tax rate would be on a bit of a roller coaster.
Okay.
So we're actually trying to fill that up so it doesn't decline in 2021, so it doesn't increase as much in 2022.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I'd love to speak to you outside of this too. I mean, just to maybe try to figure that out and what because I understand what the benefits are of taking the 500,000 for the tax rate. I mean, one of the things that I've always kind of said is that I never like, I don't like the tax rate staying high just for the sake of staying high to keep it,
Right.
level. I'd rather, frankly, if it drops, I'd rather see it drop. I mean,
Right.
but I mean that's just me. So.
Yeah. So the world of circuit breakers, which is affects everybody, for libraries and cities and towns and schools.
Right.
It's everyone trying to manage that tax rate to not increase it or to not decrease it. So, you're not pulling dollars back and forth from each other. And so it's always trying to in the circuit breaker world, you're always trying to manage the tax rate. But that is definitely a policy decision, letting it go up and down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys coming, and if you ever have anything else, I mean, obviously don't hesitate to email any of us or any of the city councilors.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And same goes for you guys. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me and let me know.
Thanks, Cheryl and Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. So with that being said, I'd like, because we're talking about tax rates and circuit breakers and stuff. So Todd, are you on or no?
Yeah, I'm present.
Okay. Are you the one speaking now, or John?
Yeah,
Or
I'll address the public safety building project
okay.
and geo bond associated with that. Quite frankly, everything that Mike and Cheryl touched on, you could delete library and insert city. Managing that tax rate either steady or declining, so we don't have, we can still provide those services. And in this particular case, relative to the public safety building, the background of that project, We occupied that facility in 1997, so it is 23 years old. That debt, much like the library financing, is set to retire at the end of this year. I've had conversation, I know, with the committee chair and with the council president. We've done some space analysis, and what you have provided to you are exhibits that as a work product of Greg Garitas, the city's financial advisor. And also on the line is Catherine with Krieg DeVault. She's our bond counsel. This particular instrument does have some statutory deadlines, much like you heard with the library. And at this point, what the strategy is moving forward is just to say, for the sake of time, we have looked at this project in a myriad of ways, such that we would vacate the premises entirely, sell the building, and turn it into private taxable land, and try to achieve some economies with other public projects. And things have occurred and, quite frankly, not occurred. That's cost prohibitive based upon the real estate pricing that we're seeing now. So what you have in the exhibit form here that Greg Garitas will speak to with brevity and concision is building a new fire station using the current capacity of the tax rate in an appropriate bond size, such not to exceed what the current debt service is, supported by the levy, and build a new fire station on the property on Ditch Road, close to Maple Glen Elementary. That real estate is already owned by the city. Move fire operations to that location, allowing for a remodel, and the police department then occupy fully the current public safety building as we know it today. So with that background, I would like to turn this over to Greg Garitas, kind of walk you through those draft exhibits that you have in your possession that gives you not only a look of the GEO bond strategy, but also the renewal, what is termed as a public safety building lease instrument, and can describe how that would impact the tax rate over time. So with that, I will yield the microphone to Greg Garitas, and I would also like Catherine with Krieg DeVault, our bond counsel, to touch on the statutory benchmarks that we need to achieve before 12/31, if in fact we're able to do this. Mr. Garitas.
Thank you, Todd. I'm assuming that everyone has a copy of the two reports that we put together.
I do.
Okay, so I'm looking at the first report, which is labeled Capital Funding Plan with proposed 2020 GOs and future financing property tax bonds. And specifically, if you're looking at that, you look at the summary of the debt service requirement, current and proposed bonds, and you will see the bonds that we are talking about coming off. And then you will see on that sheet a column labeled 2020 new PSB lease that we have coming on. Okay, proposed to come on. So that is, and that debt schedule comes back to basically the page 11, which is the amortization of that over the entire period. At this point, on the PSB lease, we're having the debt fall off, and the one labeled PSB lease, the old one, and we'll be putting the new one on. As you can see, if we keep that around the $5 million level, the actual impact will be $550,000 versus almost $400,000. So it will go down. So, Todd, the summary page page number 1 is the most critical page. Questions on that page?
Okay, this is Joe Edwards, looking at the capital funding plan, the first page, and I'm looking at the other one, which is the without proposed 2020 GO bonds.
Yes,
And in the far right-hand column, the annual debt service on the other is about $5 million plus less. Why would this, the one that is 42,831,000, why would that be better than the other one? Is there something that happens to the tax rate in that?
no, what we're showing you is report number 1 is without, we're showing you specifically the impact of the 2020 proposed GO bonds. So one is with the GO bond, one is without. That's why it's $5 million lower.
Okay,
And if
so
you look at that column, Joe, you'll see the 2020 GO bond on the second report is zeroed out.
yeah, I see that now. Okay, just my question. You know, I suppose we want to do it the less expensive way, but we do have to provide the service, so that's the other thing we've got to look at.
Yes.
Can we do the GO bond without inflating our overall city tax rate?
Well, I'm going to let Todd help me out here, but if Todd's got some capital needs, and if we don't do them with the GO bond and we build them into the budget, number one, we'll have a non-balanced budget. So I expect our expenses to exceed our revenues unless you cut the expenses somewhere. And I've been over those expenses with the clerk treasurer's office in pretty big detail. I've actually gone through them line by line.
Okay.
Yeah, so, this is Todd. Yeah, so this is Todd, and as you know, I think many of you sat in the budget planning sessions back in early July, late June, and for this kind of is jumping ahead a bit in the agenda, but we've kept expenses for 2021 as flat as possible outside of any sort of other market increases and non-discretionary spending. So we do have a compiled list, an infographic that we can circulate on what projects and purchases would be impacted in this by not renewing this GO bond, as I have noted in this public forum previously. And I certainly understand the position of many of the counselors in this committee and Counselor Pat and I have had the discussions. If we want to employ a different strategy for these sorts of things, we're all for it as the administration. It's just we need to work on a plan to get there. We didn't arrive here in a day, and nor should we expect to step away from this project in a day. I understand there's cash, a healthy cash balance on hand, and in part that's how we got there using this strategy. The other thing it's worth noting in this public forum is the coordination that is being sought. You heard the library. I've sat in 2 sessions with Cheryl and the township and the school corporation. So all these overlapping taxing units, but for the county, of course, and solid waste district, are trying to coordinate our tax rates and taxing strategies together. I can tell you that wasn't always the case in Westfield's history, but happy to report that is occurring now. So with that, I think with these exhibits, I'd like to kind of pivot towards Catherine and kind of have her give you a sense of what the statutory cadence is, marching towards the end of the year. And as you've already heard with the library and Mike Reuter, with not renewing it destabilizes the tax rate if we need to come back and do this again. So, Catherine, if you're on the line, if you would kind of just give this committee a sense of the statutory cadence.
And this is for the annual GO, right? Because I know we're talking about two different things tonight. So
let's talk let's talk about the public safety building.
Oh, okay. So public safety building, since this is a leased bond, which would be done actually be issued by the Westfield Public Building Corporation. This would require actually obtaining 50 signatures requesting lease of the project. And the reason we lease the project, the lease project would be a project outside constitutional debt limits and would allow the project to move forward. Once those petitions were received, the council would meet to accept those petitions, preliminarily adopt a resolution, and move forward with a public hearing on the lease. And in conjunction with those actions, the building corporation would hold its meeting to adopt a resolution approving the issuance of bonds and forms of financing document. Once the council would hold the public hearing on the lease, after that adoption, there's actually a 30-day remonstrance or objection period, I should say. Remonstrance is a strong word, but objection period. If that period expires with no application for petition remonstrance, then the bond sale would go forward. But with all of those actions, it's a fairly tight schedule to keep us on track to issue prior to the end of the year. So those actions would actually need to start, fairly quickly. Todd, did I leave anything out there that I need to touch on?
No, I think what will be helpful is one of your typical timeline of action steps would be helpful that we can push out to the entire council to give them the awareness.
Okay.
All this underpinned, again, gentlemen, by the fact the building is 23 years old and it has outlived its space capacity for both police and fire. And we've identified this as the best way and most economical way, given the current conditions of real estate pricing, to really build out for the next 20 years and 23 years as this building has served. So with that, I'll yield the microphone back to you all and entertain any questions since we're almost at the halfway mark of this meeting.
Hey, okay, Todd, this is Troy. Hey, I know when we were talking earlier, it says 5 million on these schedules. I thought you were saying 6 to 8 million.
The 68, keep in mind, there's two different tranches here. So this is to build a fire station using the current levy capacity, then to pay for that fire station. If you recall in our discussion, there will be a separate financing package that we need to come to you with to remodel the current public safety building. So that is, I think, represented, Greg, in Greg's exhibits, modeled there as well, what that impact potentially would be. I think in the 2023.
Is that 2023?
Is that correct?
Okay.
Greg?
Yes.
Okay, so we're basically saying 5 million and 5 million, because I saw the 2023, and that's why I was looking at this. I'm like, okay, so 2020, we're saying
Correct.
5 million, and then another 5 million in 2023.
Yeah. So great question. And so just for further clarity, we've sized the project based upon what that bond capacity will be with a neutral impact to the tax rate, right? So keeping that tax rate stable. When we come back to you again, and also in our previous conversations, we have the architect on staff now doing that space analysis and see what would the remodel actually cost. I gave a conservative estimate, meaning high, on a $6 to $8 million bond issuance to remodel, because there's there's demo that has to take place. There's a complete HVAC system needs to be replaced, and I don't have a good number for that. But using those two figures as a plug number, we'll have a better idea once we get their work product in hand on the remodel component.
Okay, so does this or does this not include the remodel? I apologize.
So what we're talking about tonight on this bond issuance, renewing it would not include the remodel, would only allow us to borrow the money to go build a new fire station. So then we could remodel in a separate financing instrument the current public safety building.
Okay, so we're talking 16 to 18 million total.
12 to 16.
Where are you getting that number again? I'm sorry.
I apologize. So the 5 million plus 5.3 million plus the 6 to 8.
Oh, you excuse me. You're including, pardon me. You're including the GEO bond
No,
as well in that?
no. I thought it said public safety. I'm in the second attachment, by the way. It says public safety building lease rental bonds, 5 million, and then in 2023, it says public safety building lease series 2023, 5.3 million.
So,
or 5.38.
If I may, and Todd, this is Scott. Correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying here is you're asking for 5 million to move forward with building the new firehouse, the new fire station, and then we know that in 2023 there's going to be another 5.3 to do the remodel of the current building. That's essentially what this is.
Yes, so those are rough estimates. We're more secure or more firm on the fire station funding because we know what the current levy will support and it being neutral to the tax rate, the city's tax rate. So that bond will be sized accordingly. The estimates of the remodel are in that range as well. So we don't have a really good number quite yet, but certainly we'll report that back as we get our hands around it.
So forgive me for asking.
That's where I was getting the 6 to 8. I was confused on that. So okay.
So if I may, Todd, and again, I just I want to make sure that this is really clear here and make sure that I have a good understanding of this. The 5 million, I understand that what we're trying to do here is related specifically and directly to the tax rate, and I understand the approach that you're wanting to take with that. The question that I would have on this is, and I know I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball a little bit here, but especially when it comes to 2023, and I won't even go down that path. But what is an estimated cost for building the new home for the fire department?
Well, for the fire department, we've modeled that 5 million plus or minus.
So that's the money you're asking. That's the money that you're modeling. I understand that. Do we know what the actual what a decent estimation of the actual cost would be?
Are we talking remodel or are we talking new construction on Ditch Road?
Well, I'm going to ask both, but I know the remodel we're looking at a little farther down the road.
Yeah. So my answer to that is we've sized the project based on what we currently can afford today and not raise the tax rate. So if that yields out let's say $5.2 million, $5 million plus or minus, obviously, that's what we will build. Now, where do we get that? We're comfortable with that number, Counselor, based upon our most recent fire station project, of which there's been a lot of technical work already done that we don't have to pay for, that being Station 83 in front of Washington Woods. There were no real estate costs associated with that in partnership with the school corporation. There are no real estate costs associated with this proposed project. With escalation and some building modifications, we are comfortable in this $5 million range. Quite frankly, we have to be, so we don't push the tax rate up.
So that answers my question, I believe. So my concern was, we're looking at 5 million because we're working with a rate here and we're trying to navigate those waters. But is 5 million actually what you're expecting to spend?
I would say so. I mean, it's just it's like any budgetary process. If it we just have to make it work. I mean, we're comfortable with that number. We've talked about this with our consultants, the engineers and architects, our past experience. Granted, it's the marketplace is a bit higher right now for cost of construction, but given the site that we've identified, it's already owned, and there's just a lot of overhead that we don't have to build into this budget. So I think we're really comfortable with that number. Now, can we build it for less? You got to have a larger building than what Station 83 is already on Grassy Branch Road. So we arrived at this number, to match the current capacity and to meet the needs of the fire headquarters.
Sure. And again, I know the answer is going to be the same. But again, I also realize I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball that doesn't exist. But it's a fair estimate that we're going to build one from the ground up for $5 million, give or take, and remodeling the current facility that we have is also going to be roughly $5 million.
Yeah, that's a rough estimate. It's approximately 40,000 square foot building. There's some demolition that has to take place where the current fire apparatus is stored. We've long fought a structural roof problem there, so that has to be removed, replaced back with bays for the police department, evidence storage, so on and so forth, and a complete remodel. So that number certainly could go down, but I don't have a good number to give you other than what we've already presented and modeled.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, we certainly can entertain questions even offline. What I would suggest is that your council meeting on Monday, we begin a formal process and the public, the discussion on the public safety building. You will get a kind of a cadence of milestones from Catherine as the bond counselor, so you have a complete awareness of what needs to happen and when, and by what time, and we can just move the public discussion further down the path if you all are comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to do it. We need to go down the path. Which path we take, I've not decided on. But Todd, are there any other public projects that are included in this, or just the ones you've mentioned?
Just the ones are noted here in the public safety realm.
Right. Good.
Okay. So, up our geo bond also.
I'm sorry, it skipped out there. I just heard geo bond.
Okay, so we just addressed the tax caps, et cetera, and all the different things that go on. So we don't really need to talk about the geo bond either, right?
No, I would again expect to introduce that at your Monday meeting. It's more operationally critical versus time critical, and you see in those exhibits how Mr. Garatas has modeled those, the impacts with and without.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, I appreciate it, Todd. So let's go to the budget versus actual then. John?
I'm sorry?
Are we going to address the budget versus actual at all? I mean,
Well, I sent you the documents that I have so far. Is there? I guess I'm assuming that's what you were looking for.
okay. So last time when we did the budget versus actual, and again, I told Todd we don't have to necessarily get into it this time because we're going to address these other things, but in the last budget versus actual, we went through, and it's on a quarterly basis, we said, hey, this is what our budget was, this is what we spent, and then we had footnotes. So, I mean, I think what you sent me today only had like our annual budget and then just what's been spent year to date. I mean, is that correct?
That is correct. Those are the reports, the second quarter reports that Cindy's office produces.
Todd, I'm sorry, Shirley, this is Scott. I was just going to jump in very quickly. What do we need to do? How do we go about getting footnotes as to, anything that might be off or might be tracking differently than what it should? How do we go about getting those footnotes? Because again, this is something that we don't want to do this just as an exercise and just as something to create extra work for anyone. This is something that I feel is really important that we have available for the taxpayers to kind of keep an eye on and kind of know where the money's going. So I think it's really important to have those footnotes. How do we get that moving forward?
Yeah, so Councilor Fry, this is Todd again. As you know, we've had a team member depart who the last report that you received, that was the efforts of Tammy Havard, who's no longer on our team. I think what might be helpful, and this is probably another discussion because it does create some additional work as far as directors pointing out why is this appropriation above or below and what have you. But it might be helpful that we revisit the OpenGov concept. I know that we had it disabled for a bit because there was some incongruent data reflected in NAV that was quite frankly inaccurate on some dimensions. So maybe it's worth a discussion because that is real time. That taxpayers can log on and look and see what the spend is. There's any level of detail, as Councilor Edwards knows, as being part of that pilot group that kind of put that and launched that together, that might solve and satisfy that need for awareness that is real time versus even quarterly. And I think taxpayers can then view and print any number of reports that they'd like. So that might be a better alternative that's more user-friendly in real time. That would be my suggestion. The here and now would be a whole lot more clunky, I believe, in that the directors would have to go through and they know their budgets, no doubt about it, but explaining in the footnotes, as you say, why the fuel line is, plus 60% versus negative 30%.
Sure.
So I would entertain that notion, working with you as a committee and the clerk's office to see how we could really leverage that OpenGov portal again and be a bit more accurate for viewer consumption.
So I appreciate that feedback, and what I would say is again, whatever we need to do, however we need to do it, and again, I don't want to make an issue about the footnotes. I'm not looking for huge lengthy explanations, but something just to kind of point out where the discrepancies might be or where things might be tracking a little differently than expected. Again, I can't emphasize enough how important that is to have that available for the taxpayers, especially as here we are looking to budget their money for the upcoming years. So I think it's very important to be absolutely clear where the money's going and let them track that at any point they want to.
Completely agree, and I'll sound kind of repetitious here. I think the OpenGov portal will satisfy a lot of that desire for knowledge, and it can be very detailed, really granular, if we so choose and set those parameters up. So maybe it's something that the administration and this committee could convene again and kind of just look at that functionality, and you guys set the parameters by which detail is visible. We're comfortable with whatever you'd like to do, and I think it would actually supersede footnotes and just some delayed explanations because it's real time. We're processing daily. The clerk's office is processing daily. So that might be the best way to bring that level of clarity and transparency back to the forefront.
We'll talk about that with the administration a little later, sooner, I hope, but we need to talk about how we accomplish that, so.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Okay. All righty.
I just
Okay.
want to make a comment though.
Yeah.
What is put into NAV is what we were given by department head. So I don't know when it's pulled into OpenGov, then I have no idea. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Just what we put in NAV is what actually happened. So I don't know where it goes from there. Just want to make that comment.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but I know we're going to do ourselves a disservice if the numbers don't match up and don't line up to to everything, and it's going to create more issues and headaches and complications than what we're trying to overcome here. So I think that's important to kind of keep in mind.
Well, we have spent the money for OpenGov, and we've sustained that, and we haven't put anything up, and we need to find a way to sustain it properly, to do a good job that's factual and is correct, and so we'll be coming forward with some ideas on that.
Yeah, I think that's good. So this is Troy. Just one more point on that, and I think Todd's making some good points, and Scott and Cindy and Joe. So the one thing as a taxpayer, if you look at it, and it's great to have granular detail. The one reason that a lot of companies do quarterly budgets is because that way it gives them a benchmark time frame that they can go in and say, hey, this is. For this quarter, it was this. For last quarter, it was that. This is what we were expected it to be for the quarter. Because most taxpayers, and I would say 99% of all taxpayers, don't even know we have an OpenGov. I would bet. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would be willing to bet. And so that's why I always thought with a working budget on a quarterly basis, somebody could just look at the footnotes and say, okay, hey, I get it. Hey, here, we were under budget by $50,000. Here, we were over budget by 35. And the reason we were over budget is right here, because maybe the department head wrote out that footnote and go from there, just to make it really simple, so people can get in and out and not have to worry about it. But again, that's something I guess we can talk about. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Jeremy, did you want to say something about the splash park? I mean, I looked at everything. I don't have a problem with any of it. I don't know if you're here still or
yeah, I'm still here.
Lulling you to sleep,
I am still here and very interested. No, I don't really have anything to say specifically about it. The current equipment and operations have past their useful life. It is time for us to replace that equipment, and this is the RFP. We sent you the two that we received, just under $300,000, and given the fact that the splash park has not been up given our COVID situation, we are kind of pushing this through a little bit so that we can get the project started, just to ensure that when we open next year that we are opening with a new splash pad. So happy to answer any questions you have about the project itself.
Okay. I think it sounds good.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay, I've got 6:48. Does anybody else have any other business that they'd like to discuss from finance-wise?
Hey, Troy, I just wanted to, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to mention that I don't know if everybody knows or not, but auditors are here. They're on site one time a week. Other than that, they're doing it remotely. They're doing 18 and 19. They'll go back a few months in 17. We'll have a regular audit for 18. In 19, it'll be a federal audit. So we'll have two separate exits. So they said that it probably won't take longer than a month or so. So I just wanted to let everybody know they are here.
What is a federal off audit?
because we get federal money. We
Oh,
have
okay.
to-
How we steward that, okay, all right.
Yes, yes.
I don't have anything else, Troy.
Okay, okay. Scott Fry,
I'm good. I appreciate it.
Todd?
No, sir.
Okay.
Good.
All right, let's adjourn the meeting. All right, this meeting is now adjourned. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.